Spark Success podcast show. I am here with a fantastic guest today, and this is the podcast show where I have conversations with smart and savvy business owners and people doing really amazing stuff around the globe. And I'm your host, Liz Hamlet. I'm a success coach and business mentor, and I'm also founder of Spark Succeed. So today I've got a fantastic guest. She is a diversity and inclusion specialist, a speaker, and she provides transgender awareness, advice and support to businesses. As founder of See Change Happen, she lives by the mantra smile, engage and educate to promote awareness and understanding and to overcome people's fears of getting it wrong. So I'm delighted to welcome this morning Joanne Lockwood. How are you, Joanne?
Good morning, Liz. Absolutely fantastic to be here on a, well, probably a slightly more grey Monday morning than we've been used to, but no, I'm really good, thank you.
Yeah, I think winter has finally hit us after that long summer.
We've had to put the winter duvet on, so yeah, it's definitely a bit nippy. And I think the heating came on briefly this morning as well, so yeah, we're in that zone.
Oh, yeah, we've been given into the heating this weekend, definitely. Well, I'm delighted to have you because we've had a chat prior to this. I was very keen to get you on the show, so I'm very interested in all the work you're doing with businesses and everything. So do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, about what you're doing now and your sort of journey to, you know, how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, this segment of my life, this sort of phase of my life started about 4 years ago. Until 4 years ago, I'd spent the majority of my life running IT companies. So I founded an IT company in the late 90s, which I ran until about 4 years ago through a couple of iterations. And I think like many, we get stuck on our rails. We find it really hard to get off. There's all these expectations about who we should be, what we should do, these chains of responsibility that force us to stay in our lane and carry on them, no matter how unhappy we are, whether that's in a relationship or whether it's in our role or whether it's just the pressure of being you sometimes. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, I got this kind of feeling that had been building inside of me that I needed to transition my gender, which is why if your viewer or listeners are confused, my voice is slightly deep. I'd lived my male life for the majority of my life until my very late early 40s, early 50s. But it just became necessary for me to do something about this. And of course, once you start putting that kind of thought into your head, your whole value system, your whole kind of what do you stand for is also up in the air. And it allows you to sort of like step off this train of life, get off at a station, a main interchange like Manchester Piccadilly, we can go anywhere in the country you like. I think, well, where do I really want to go? And I realized that I was becoming kind of past my sell-by date in IT. I was going a bit moldy. I was going, here we go again. IT is always changing. And I was kind of getting tired of the change and having to be reinventing myself all the time. It was no longer sparking my interest. So my gender, I needed to change that. In fact, the only thing I decided that I needed was to retain the things that are important. You know, what are the unacceptable casualties of this change? And I boiled it down, and it's the only casualty I wasn't prepared to sacrifice was my wife and the relationship I had with my wife. Everything else, as far as I was concerned, was up for grabs: status, wealth, assets, stuff, and even to the point, relationships with close friends and other family members, my parents, my brother, my children. Those were all up for grabs. But the only thing I wasn't going to sacrifice was the relationship with my wife. And that was kind of the underlying mantra of the whole thing. So yeah, I sold my shares in my business, my IT company that I'd owned for best part of 20 odd years, to my business partners. And yeah, I wasn't rich. It wasn't like a lottery win, more like a decent redundancy payment. Yeah. And I embarked on my gender transition at the beginning of 2017. And the slightly extra burden on that journey was my wife and I also took part in a Channel 4 documentary called The Making of Me, which broadcast in February 2019, which is still online, and if your listeners can listen to it. And that kind of caught the pain, the trauma that my wife and I went through during my gender transition. But I came out of that very confused. So March 2017, I was very confused. I didn't know what my name was. I had a family that weren't really ready for me. I had no business. I'd sold up, and I had no income apart from the buyout. So I had to rapidly get a mindset of, kind of bounce back ability, resilience, positivity. And I was fortunate enough, and this was random. I got on a NatWest Entrepreneurial Spark Accelerator program. And it really was random. I saw an Eventbrite, and I was doing a bit of networking at the time. I saw an Eventbrite, and I saw them mention a free food buffet, and I thought, oh, that sounds a bit interesting. So I turned up and sat in this hall with hundreds of other people, listened to this presentation by it was eSpark before NatWest took over. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. I'm going to apply for that. It doesn't cost anything. What am I going to lose? And I got accepted. But it really was. I mean, I could have easily missed that Eventbrite. I could have easily not paid attention to it. Or I could have had that limiting belief that kicked in and said, well, that's not for me. I couldn't do that. But I sat in there, and that really did teach me about mindset, about, not quacking like a duck, you soaring like an eagle. It's about thinking like an entrepreneur, having a mindset of an entrepreneur, always pitching, always selling, always being opportunistic. And that stuck with me. And it didn't teach me anything as such. It unlocked what I knew already. It basically just shone a torch on areas of my mind and personality that I was able to tap into. And it really sparked me, to succeed. And so, if I cast back to a pivotal moment, it was that lucky Eventbrite booking, that lucky evening.
Wow.
That introduced me to a network of people and gave me the belief. But I often talk about luck, and I often say that lucky things happen to lucky people. If you behave in a way where luck will find you, then luck does. And you could argue that luck is actually planned success. But I think most entrepreneurs and most successful people would say there's a moment of luck that came out of nowhere. So, if you're not feeling lucky, run around in circles until you find some, and then work out where it came from. But that's me in a nutshell.
And that's fantastic. And I know, obviously that time, a few years ago, it was like huge change and, very unstable. But it sounds like you've managed to sort of use that change to actually sort of spark off new ideas. And, I know what you're doing now is, really key to working with businesses to raise the awareness. And, a lot of businesses, I've heard you talk before, a lot of businesses, pertain to be very good at sort of diversity inclusion, yet the sort of transgender community are sort of very much sidelined in that. You had some really interesting facts I remember in terms of sort of the general population and their sort of openness to, the trans community, yet the amount that actually are, within organisations. Can you remember that stat? I just found it really interesting.
Yeah, it was... Stonewall just had a new CEO, and one of her opening articles in Pink News or even maybe in the Times was that one stat was that when surveyed, 75% of the population are fully supportive for trans rights, fully supportive of trans people in the society, have no problem, not that one should have a problem with anybody, but are fully accepting, or at least mostly accepting of trans people to be able to live their lives in the way they want to. Yeah, only 1 in 3, less than a third of employers said they would employ someone who was trans or genderqueer. And that's a worrying stat that's borne out that one of the challenges of transitioning, one of the challenges of being trans or genderqueer or gender diverse is that you are an outsider, you're another, you're an outlier. You don't fit the mold. Everyone likes a trans friend, but nobody wants a trans employee, sort of thing. We're seen often as problematic, often divisive, often people maybe think we're campaigners or we're angry, and that could be, but that can also be applied to people with a disability, people who are Black. Often minorities are seen as angry troublemakers, and often what all minority people do, or less typical or less represented people do, is react to a situation they're put in. I didn't ask to be made to feel angry or because I was discriminated today. I'm just reacting and standing my ground. But no, not every trans person is a militant activist. Most of us just want to get up in the morning, do a fantastic job, love our family, and come home in the evening and, I don't know, watch a bit of EastEnders or follow what's going on with COVID on the news like everybody else at the moment. So there is a challenge there. We are not typical. And I think we'll all be, if we're honest, beauty bias goes a long way in the world. We buy from people who are like us, we buy from people we like, we mix with people like us, we propagate that monoculture within our own network, we live in our own echo chamber. And often trans people don't fit into most people's idea of circle of friends. So to socialize with somebody, it's seen as kind of, you may like me on social media, you may promote me, but would you go out for dinner with me? Would you go for a drink with me? Would you invite me into your company to have a chat with you about something other than trans awareness?
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges I put to people. Quite clearly, I've run businesses. Quite clearly, I'm a social seller. Yeah. I'm a marketeer. I'm a salesperson. I have my own CRM. I have my own sales process. I can sell. I can market. I can deliver. Yet those skills are often erased by my transiness, for want of a better word.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm really interested in the work you're doing with businesses, because I've seen all the different businesses you're going into and you're sort of, advising different organisations as well. I've seen you've done some things in like the housing sector recently, as well as sort of some of the big corporates as well. And, one of the things you talk about is helping to overcome, people's fear of sort of saying the wrong thing, getting it wrong. So what sort of work are you doing in that sort of specialism area?
I think that goes where anybody is less typical or less represented in organizations or in your community. There's always this anxiety of saying the wrong things. If you don't have good friends who are black and you're white, you're concerned about, do I use the wrong language? Is it a black person? Is it a person of color? Is it a color person? People always get confused about language. They're really worried about fluffing it. Is it a disabled person, a person with a disability, a wheelchair user, wheelchair bound? There's all this language around communities and groupings that an outsider feels kind of strange about. And often what you find is that people would disengage and walk away rather than risking getting it wrong. But the effect of that is that the person you're disengaging and walking away from or nervous around can feel that body language, can feel that eye contact, can feel that nervousness. And immediately the defenses go up. Well, what's wrong with me? Why can't you talk to me? Why are we having this problem? Why are you nervous? Why am I making you nervous? And then we'll make our own stories up in our head through our own biases. Oh, another person that's not trans positive. Oh, here we go again. You're going to ask me about my surgery and my body parts again. Here we go. Or something like that. So my advice would be is to build new affinities. Immerse yourself with people who aren't like you. Look at your circle of friends and expand it. Expand it and think about it. And if that means spending a couple of nights on Channel 4 watching Love Island and Towie and all these other things to learn about Gen Zs and millennials and Gen Alphas, if it means watching some documentaries on queer people, gay people, trans people, and learning about us, get some real life stories, get involved with human libraries to hear some lived experiences, and just become friendly, professionally friendly with people who are different. And then when you meet other people who are different, not like you won't have the same anxieties. And that's why I and others always encourage organizations to do lunch and learns and lived experience talks and invest that time to create those conversations and involve everybody, not just the shop floor, but the C-suite, the management. We need everybody having these conversations so that it becomes everyday. Whatever. Hi, Joe. What are you doing today? What do you do at the weekend? That's the kind of conversation I want.
Yeah, Exactly. And I know we talked about, how now a big part of your role is sort of getting up and talking. Obviously, things have changed slightly. You're not talking in front of big rooms of people at the moment. The impact that's having on people, because obviously you're advising on both companies, both for their customer base, but also about their employees, aren't you? So how have you found sort of the reception and questions? You're getting a lot of questions after you do those engagements.
Yeah, reassuringly, one of the surveys, whenever I do a talk, and when I've moved everything online, I'm very conscious about engagement, audience engagement. Everyone's got control of the off switch when you're online. They can put you to, they can minimize you, they can get on with Outlook, they can read their emails, they can go make a cup of coffee. So I'm really conscious about this engagement, making sure that I've got people engaged. So one of the things I do very early on is to ask people's opinions. I do a little quiz, an online quiz with a QR code on the phone. And one of the questions I always ask is, do you know someone in your circle of friends, your family, your business, who is trans or gender non-conforming? And in most cases, that is generally represented. 75% of people know someone who's trans.
Yeah.
And I always say to people that after this talk, you can count me as a friend as well, so you can answer yes to that next time. But I think I'm surprised, pleasantly surprised, when I go out, when I was doing physical talks, the number of people that come up to me afterwards and say, my son, my daughter, my partner, my dad is trans, and seeing you out in this world succeeding and being visible is so powerful, and it gives them hope that their loved one can also thrive and succeed. So I think everybody, or most people, have got a trans person in their extended life. And I think, even though we're 1% of the population, I mean, that's no different to the R rate of COVID, is it? I mean, it's kind of, everyone's coming in contact with somebody somewhere, or knows someone that has had COVID. And I'm not trying to say trans people are anything like COVID, but it's remarkable how small a population can be easily touched by that 6 degrees of separation. I think the statistic is something like 1% of the population are vegan, or 1% of the population have the Jewish faith in the UK. That's 600 odd thousand. So that's the kind of number of trans or gender non-conforming. Yeah. And if you put in non-binary or gender questioning into that, it's probably 2%. So it doesn't become difficult. Most people know someone who's vegan. Most people know someone who's Jewish, whether they're actively Jewish or passively Jewish or openly Jewish. So you probably know someone who's trans. They maybe just haven't chosen to share that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really pleased to see the impact you're having in some of the more traditional foundations. Like, I know that you've had a first for Rotary, haven't you? Is it?
I'm not sure about first. I'm not the first trans person in Rotary. I was national president of the Round Table in my in my youth, in my younger days. Round Table have an age limit of 45, so I'm now the first openly past national president of the Round Table, which is a men-only male club. Yeah. I mean, at the time I was trans. I just wasn't open about it.
Yeah.
And that's often the way with trans people, is that we always are. We just, one, don't admit it to ourselves. Yeah. We know it, but we don't admit it. But secondly, we're not open and sharing that with the world and with the people near us. So. And that was one of the challenges I had being open about me, was people look at me like I was crazy, going, well, I don't get it. I've known you for 30 years. And I would look at it and go, yeah, but this has always been inside me, even when we were doing that, even when we were on that stairway again, even when we were going out drinking, even though we were being silly, these thoughts were always in my head. And I was having this wrestling match. It's like that, what's that film where they've got the little toys in their head controlling the brain? I can't remember what it's called now, but and the little balls they put into the chutes. Yeah, if you've seen that cartoon, it's like that. You've got this other little toy in your head wrestling all the other toys. This is the gender identity toy, sort of fighting with everybody, going, no, slapping them around the face, going, no, that's not me. But because there's only one of those and it's in a minority, your main programming kicks in all the time. Yeah. And it's only when your gender identity is able to take control and you listen to it and you own it, that everything becomes clearer, and your head becomes a really calm place. It becomes a really kind of, wow, this is what silence feels like. This is what comfort and relaxed and one thought feels like. Whereas most of my life I've had this wrestling match and this argument in my head and this double thinking going on. And it's such a clarity now to be at one with myself.
And I think that comes across in, you know, how you hold yourself, how you talk about, you know, very clear about, you know, your experience and how you can sort of put that across as an expert, you know, to support businesses and, you know, other people to sort of raise awareness and, you know, be more open to the trans community, definitely. So what would you say has been the biggest factor in your success?
Tenacity, bounce back ability, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
Someone told me, when I drank a lot of coffee, I met a lot of people, I knocked on a lot of doors early on. I camped on LinkedIn days at a time, hours at a time, building networks, paying it forward, being generous. And one of the ways I describe paying it forward, you know, we think paying it forward means I give, then I get back. But true paying it forward, the way I describe it, is like having a boomerang. And you stand at the middle of a field and you throw this boomerang as hard as you possibly can, into the sun, and it's gone. You never expect to see that boomerang again. In fact, it's probably a stick. It's not even a boomerang. But you throw this boomerang as hard as you can into the sun. And then one day, you just turn around and catch it. And it's there. And you don't know where it's come from, how it got back to you, but it comes out of nowhere. And it's just about investing in these boomerangs that you just throw away for no return. And then magically they reappear. And sometimes they just keep coming in. And that's the magic of a really altruistic paying it forward. So being a guest contributor, taking part in things. And yes, you could call that you could trade luck for a social selling strategy, a personal brand strategy. This is the kind of stuff. But to be authentic in your personal brand, you can't be doing it with one hand in your purse, one hand with your hand out with an invoice at the end of it. You've truly got to believe that this is an investment without any return. And I did a lot of that, and that has paid great dividends. But it's taken me 3 years. And someone said to me at the beginning that you're not going to get, it's going to take you 2 years to get anywhere. And I thought, that's a long time. That's a long time. And they were right. It's taken 18 months, 2 years. And then COVID hit. And then the world changed. Thanos clicked his finger and everybody disappeared and business evaporated. But I suppose because I'd had a reinvention and I was used to putting my life in this blender and making a new cake, if you like, recently. This was just another mix. This was just another set of ingredients. Yeah. And I had a pity party. I mean, like most people, I cried a bit. I mourned all of my emails coming in saying, hold, cancelled, we'll get back to you. And I thought, what can I do? I can lay in bed, but I tried that 4 years ago. It didn't work. You don't get anywhere laying in bed and feeling miserable for yourself. So I thought, let's do what I can do. Back to what I did. Pay it forward. Be good. Join some groups. I used my IT expertise to kind of reinvent my IT delivery, my speaking. I geared myself up with microphones, lighting, and nice backlighting, and all this sort of kind of stuff. So I invested heavily, and I also got seen as an expert and helped other people set their remote speaking up and their delivery. And I provided a lot of training. I even ran an online course for it. And I decided to organize my own little mini conference online, which I had about 150 people turn up to in a one-day event. And yeah, it had some issues, but I had loads of great feedback. So I tried lots of new things. I just dabbled. And I think again, a great friend of mine, Tom Morley, says, be top of mind. By being authentic, keeping in people's minds in a non-pushy, authentic way. I'm doing something valuable. I want to share it with you. If you want to learn from this, fantastic. If you'd ever like to have a conversation, call me if you want to, ever. No push. And I think that's helped. Being top of mind, thinking, being very commercial and entrepreneurial about it, looking at the posts on LinkedIn that do well, crafting great stories, crafting great engagement, using the power of LinkedIn and the social selling strategy. And that's how lucky people get lucky, is by doing the right things consistently, having this cadence, having this regularity, being dependable, and being easy and frictionless.
Amazing. You've given some really good tips there, which sort of leads me into my next question. So you've mentioned like tenacity and also, benefiting from using LinkedIn to, spread the word and connect and everything. What would you say on a sort of daily or weekly basis are your success habits that you practice that work for you?
Treat every day like a full-time role. It's a full-time job. I could bounce between events and say, well, I'm speaking twice a week. And if I could keep up that twice a week speaking, that keeps me satisfied and comfortable and able to live. Yeah. But getting up in the morning, okay, my habit is I get up at 6:45 every morning. And I spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on my phone, on LinkedIn, doing my diary, doing some research, reading the news, reading articles, going through LinkedIn, actually reading people's articles and go, interesting, save that. And then I start my day at around 9:30, 10 o'clock, which is why I was a bit late for this podcast. I was still doing some interesting article reviews this morning. But having a process, and I meet a lot of people for Zoom. I have an online calendar link, which I send out to people. So if people want to meet, I'm straight back. Here's my diary, book a time. Don't let things lie. Someone once said to me, every no is closer to a yes. So unless you ask, you never get a yes. It's better to get the no's out of the way so you're closer to that next yes. So that has always stuck with me as a way of not being shy to ask, because I'd rather know you're not interested. If you don't want to talk to me, just tell me now. And what I'll do is I'll diary in my CRM that I'm going to give you a call in 6 months to check it's still a no, because I just think you mean no right now. You actually mean maybe later. So that's my angle. So don't treat a no as a no. Just treat it as a no as not now, thank you. Yeah. And diary for a follow-up. Use a CRM. Have a routine. Have a sales process, a funnel. Bring people into it. Manage it. Chase it. Set follow-up tasks. I use HubSpot, and I always sort it by next step. Anything that hasn't got a next step in the future is dead. Why is it there? What is the next step of that task? Delete it or do it. And even if you kick it tomorrow, even if you want to procrastinate it and push it down the road a bit, it's always going to have a future date, or do it now. Yeah. So be very disciplined about that sales process and own it. Flag follow-ups, have a conversation like this. So we'll finish today, we'll do this. I'll put a follow-up for a week, and it will be something like, just check if it's been released yet. Ask how it went, what the stats on it. So I'll have a little bit of a thing there. So I know I've got to follow this up. Otherwise, you get so caught up in the day. You have like a Zoom call after Zoom call, and you get to the end of the day thinking, I don't remember having that conversation this morning. What happened there? And then have meeting notes, follow it up. I use a bit of paper, and what I do is I take a photograph of the bit of paper and file it in their folder. So I don't even have to go flashy with having lots of notes. I just have a photograph of the notes I took in pen at the time. Which are often enough to jog me. But yeah, I think having a process, having a structure, having some sort of regularity, and then keep layering. Do one thing really well before you do the next thing. So this year I decided I was going to do more online. Back in January, I decided I was going to launch a podcast. Back in January, I decided I was going to do some online training. Back in January. And I kept saying to myself, I want to do a newsletter. So I recorded the podcast. I got 10 episodes under the belt. I built all the infrastructure myself, using my IT brains on my WordPress site myself, got it up and running, did all the graphics, design, registered with Apple and Google and all the podcasts out there. So I've got it to a point now where I've got a sausage machine where I can sit down like this, have a podcast recording with somebody, dump the graphic into the template, dump the title in there, save it as a JPEG, upload it to the podcast, poof, jobs are good. And then every Monday or so, I schedule it in my WordPress site. This one's going to go out. This one's going to go out. This one's going to go out, and then back it up with social media tweets. And I've just launched a newsletter, which now features the podcast. So I've got another channel and feature some of the talks I've done and feature some of the articles I've been involved with. And I've actually outsourced that because I know I'm not good at it. So I think that's the other secret to success, is recognize what you're good at, recognize what you enjoy, not just good at, but what you enjoy. And if you don't enjoy it or you're no good at it, get someone else to do it. Otherwise, you'll never do it. Or it will distract you from things you do want to do and you aren't good at. So someone, again, a good saying, someone says, don't do the £5 tasks, do the £100 tasks. And that's, if it's low value to you and high value to somebody else, give it to somebody who's specialized in that. You know, it's this urgent and important quadrant. Urgent, not important, important, not urgent. And you've got to try and work out. So you're only doing the urgent and important, and then falling back to the important but not urgent, and then leaving everything else not important, not urgent. Someone else should be doing that.
Yeah, I heard someone last week calling it the above the line and below the line task. So above the line is anything that's going to sort of grow your business, sort of increase awareness, you know, yourself as an expert, you know, income. Anything below the line is just busy being busy, you know, like those menial things that you can sort of delegate out, and not just, you know, it's very easy to get stuck with that below the line. I really like
but I also think it's important to think about, when you're having this very high level view, is don't undervalue some of the things that people say are procrastination or waste of time. Researching, reading LinkedIn, that might look like a time waste, but it's if it's strategic with an outcome, it's actually above the line. And as I say, I spend 2 hours in the morning, I'll spend an hour in the evening, and probably an hour or two through in the day using LinkedIn, because I want to stay top of mind. I see someone post and go, oh, I've been trying to talk to them. So I'll comment on their LinkedIn, I'll like something, and I'll stalk them for a couple of days. Then at the end of the week, I'll send them an email, because I'm already in their head, because they will have seen me comment on their post and go, oh, thank you, Joe, in their head. So I've got a brownie point for being in their mind. So I know that I can now follow through with that I loved your article on LinkedIn the other day. We must catch up for the Zoom sometime. And they go, oh, yeah, that'd be really good, Joe. And I go straight in with here's my diary link. Why don't you pick a time that works for you and let's have a Zoom coffee? And they go, poof, and it's done. So I think that being tactical about it, and again, don't be afraid of getting a no. Because if that person comes back and says, Joe, I'm not interested, never want to talk to you again, you go, fine, cross, don't talk to you again. In fact, I'll follow you on LinkedIn, won't like any more of your posts. I'll throw a petty party. But you don't. No. You don't do that. What you do is you keep going, and you keep being there. You keep being you keep staying top of their mind, because one day that boomerang is going to hit their hand, and they're going to go, actually, I do want to talk to Joe now. Yeah. And it comes back again.
And that's exactly how we got together, because I think we'd connected a while back, but I was sort of very interested in the work you were doing. I sort of LinkedIn stalked you and, you know, let's meet for a coffee. I'd be really interested to have you on the podcast and find out a bit more about what you're doing. So yeah, I'm a total advocate for that approach on LinkedIn. Absolutely. So I've got another question for you. If you could start it all over again, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? I think I would probably have been a bit more organized and disciplined earlier on. I'm a lot more organized and disciplined with my CRM, with some of the things that are really benefiting. But I'm now going to argue with myself. Would I really? I needed that time in the wilderness. I needed that time to be lost with no map, no sat nav, and a cloudy sky that you couldn't even navigate by, just wandering around this dark, empty tundra, going, where am I going? I've no idea. And then stumbling across this road and going, oh, wow, that looks interesting, and following it. And then finding a crossroads and going, all right, let's give that a go. So I needed that time to explore, to be lost, to find myself, to work out what was clear. And I wouldn't go back now and tell myself not to do that, because that was my learning, that was my growth, that was my finding my passion. Doing podcasts like this for the last couple of years, I don't know, I mean, I've done probably 30, 40-ish across the world. And by speaking your truth out loud so often, it kind of, you refine your message. It becomes your message. It becomes who you are. And I'm not even trying to say that if you say something enough, it becomes true. I'm not trying to say that I've convinced myself it's true, but I feel that I'm authentic. If you're one of the first things to learn in business is to have your elevator pitch, to have your 60-second pitch, to have all this kind of pitches, your one pager. When someone says, "What do?" You don't go, you go, "This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what the benefit." When I come onto a podcast, people would say, "Describe yourself." I'm able to talk about my journey in a kind of coherent story. I've got a start, middle, and end. I've got a punchline. I've got a kind of a description about what worked, what didn't work, rather than feel like I'm winging it all the time. So I think it's okay to wing it and keep winging it. And I don't think anyone should be afraid of going out of their comfort zone into stretch, get over fear and just get into stretch and go, right, I can do this. I can do this. Sit the pants, big girl pants, go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you said exactly that about, that message being authentic and, how you just felt like you'd come into your own once you could be true and, live the life that you'd been sort of had that conflict about in your head. So sort of reflecting back over all the advice that you've received, what do you think has been the best piece of advice that you've received about sort of success in your sort of career or life? What sticks in mind?
One of the best bits of advice I received and I often give is don't listen to advice. I think there's a great phrase I like. It's strong opinions weakly held, or lightly held, whichever version it is. And I think you should have your own strength of mind. You should have your own horizon. You know where you're heading on the horizon, or at least understand that. But yes, get lost on the way. It's fine. Get lost on the way, but somehow that sometime you've got to find an exit. And seek to prove yourself wrong. And I think that's the idea of strong opinions weakly held is, as a species, we're often trying to prove ourselves right. We like our confirmation bias. We have a conversation. I want to tell you I'm right. And you want to go, yes, Joe, you're right. And I go, yeah, I win. Or you want to say, no, Joe, you're wrong. And I go, no, I'm right. And you go, no, I'm right. And we end up having these conversations about trying to prove who's the most right and justify why we think something. Isn't it far more interesting to go, maybe I'm wrong. Tell me more about what you think. And so I could spend a conversation asking you what you think, why you think that. And I could sit there and go, it's not confrontational. Yep. You'll want to talk about yourself. You'll want to talk about your opinions. You're going to be more than happy to talk about your view. And all I do is ask questions to try and refine my model of the world, incorporating your data. And at the end of it, I might go, I understand why you think that, but I have a different conclusion. And that's fine. We can both see the same event and have a different conclusion, even if we agree about the event. And that's the power of this conversation. So I think that was a great quote, strong opinions weakly held. And if you Google that, there's an author and there's a paper on it. And it's all about trying to prove yourself wrong and being open to challenge. And I think that is a great mantra for people to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I always try and approach people when they're coming on this podcast is people that are doing their own thing, that are original, that have followed, maybe sort of followed the sort of expected path initially and then just gone, and tried different things. And they're just, that's when their success came, when they were more themselves, they accepted that they didn't want to do things the same as everyone else. So, I love that, just don't follow advice. It's exactly right.
But it's also knowing when to give up. There's I've had several businesses that have had an amazing success by rolling the dice one more time. And I also have had a few businesses that have ground to a halt because I didn't know when it was time to back up and go home. So I think it's important, if you're running a business, to take the emotional attachment out of it and to not see it as failure, see it as one step closer to success by starting again or by stopping what you're doing. And it's very difficult to tell someone to give up on their dream or give someone some tough love and say, this is a shit idea, it's not going to work. And nobody wants to tell you that because it's kind of destroys your spirit. But sometimes you need to maybe look in the mirror and go, realistically, ain't going to work. Let's admit to myself. And I think if you go back to advice I would have given myself is know when one more roll of the dice is going to work. Or I was a blackjack player, you're at the blackjack table, you got two aces, you double down on two aces and you get two kings come up and you've got two 21s and you get an awesome payback. But when you're playing on a six, you think, you just don't touch it. You don't touch a six, you don't touch a five, you certainly don't touch a two. Knowing when you're sitting on those bad cards, and otherwise it's gambler's fallacy. You think, if I keep going, it will work. Gambler's fallacy never wins. So take the lucky dice and learn when to walk away with it.
That's a fantastic bit of advice to end on. So if people want to find more about what you're doing, about your work, where's the best place for them to come?
Start with my website, seechangehappen.co.uk. That's SEE changehappen.co.uk. Top right, you'll see links to my YouTube, all the other things. But if you want to go straight to LinkedIn, please do. Just LinkedIn/IN/Joe Lockwood, and you'll find me there.
Thanks. So it's been amazing. It's so great to have the chance to talk to you more after our last coffee. So thanks so much for joining me, Joe. And for the listeners today, join me for the next episode where I am joined by Dr. Jenny Brockis from Australia. She is a keynote speaker. Her most recent book is called Thriving Mind, How to Cultivate a Good Life. But she's also written many books about smarter, sharper thinking, brain fit, brain smart. So she's all about sort of healthy life and thinking. And she's also a coach at Brain Fit. So she works with companies to create thriving teams and leaders. So I'm really excited to hear more about her. She's been very active, particularly in this current time when, there's lots of extra challenges for us all. So if that sounds interesting, join me for the next episode. And if you've been inspired by the series and by our episode today, and you'd like to spark your own success, then book in a call with me at sparksucceed.co.uk. And I'll make sure all the links from Joe are in the show notes that you can just click straight through. So Joe, it's been absolutely delightful to have you today. And I'm going to check out some of your technical setup for your podcast.
It's been a pleasure. You asked me talk about my favorite subject, which is me. So it's going to be easy. But it's good to be able to talk about. It gives me clarity sometimes about my own journey and reinforces my desire to carry on, keep doing what I'm doing. So KO, keep on keeping on.
Yeah, and it's something I'm really passionate about, and I wanted to work with you to sort of share the message and all the great work you're doing with organisations and awareness. So thanks so much for joining me, and it's been fantastic to have you on the podcast.
A pleasure.
So take care then. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye.